Hey there everyone, and welcome to my channel, Time to Cook. I am Chef Christy. I'm so glad that you guys are joining me today because I have decided that I'm just going to share with you what I'm cooking in my kitchen. And the dinner that I will be making is inspired from a gift that I received. Me and Adam were recently on a trip in our truck camper, and we were staying in a campground, and there was a wonderful lady who also had a truck camper, and she gave me the best gift. She gave me a little handful of chanterelle mushrooms. I never know if I'm actually saying that correctly or not, but these are beautiful. We actually already had a few while we were on our trip. I still have some, and I don't want these to go bad, so I've got to use them up. And I thought, well, what goes perfect with mushrooms and steak? Steak goes perfect with mushrooms, so that's what I'm going to be making. I'm going to saute these mushrooms up. I'm going to show you just how to make the best steak. There's little tips and tricks to make a perfect steak, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And then I'm just going to have some mashed potatoes. I'm going to make a little gravy to go with it. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful dinner, so hang with me and see what I'll be cooking. So the first thing that I've got to do is clean these mushrooms, and I'm just going to show you how easy that is to do. All right, so as you can see, these mushrooms have not been cleaned, but I'm just going to kind of take a knife and just kind of trim up the stems a little bit. Just gently going along the stems. I'll go ahead and trim the end off. I'm just going to kind of break them into some pieces. And then I have here some warm salty water. Just going to place my mushrooms in there. And that's pretty much all there is to it. I'm just going to do all these mushrooms. So I'm just rinsing them in this salty water. So I have taken them out of the water, and I'm just going to kind of pat them dry. All right, so I have taken these paper towels and lightly patted these mushrooms dry. And now I'm just going to set them off to the side because we're going to talk steak. The steaks that I will be using today are ribeyes. And I have a few tips to share with you so that you can have the perfect steak. The first one would be to make sure that your steaks are at room temperature. Take your steaks out of the fridge and just let them sit at room temperature for about an hour. You will have a juicier steak, and you will also have a better sear on your steak if your steaks are at room temperature. Another tip would be to make sure that you season your steaks really good. I'm simply going to be using salt and pepper. I'll be seasoning both sides of the steaks, and this really does make a big difference. You want a well-seasoned steak. Another tip would be what you cook your steak in and your aromatics. I'll be cooking them in some butter and garlic, and then I have some fresh thyme. Believe me, that makes a huge difference. It adds such a delicious flavor to your steak. And then lastly, what you cook your steaks in. Believe it or not, a cast iron skillet is probably one of the best tools that you can have to cook a nice seared steak. And that's what I'll be using today. You want to make sure that your skillet is nice and hot. When you drop that steak in, that skillet needs to be hot so that it has a nice sear on that steak. But I'm going to show you exactly how to do it and walk you through it step by step. Mashed potatoes, I have covered them with water. I'm bringing them up to a boil. I also have 2 garlic cloves in there, and I'm going to throw a sprig of thyme. I also have some salt, and I'm also going to go ahead and pepper this water as well. This just helps to season those potatoes, and believe me, this really does make a difference. All right, these potatoes are fork tender, falling apart, so they are ready. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of butter into this very hot cast iron skillet. Once that butter melts, I'm going to drop in my steak. All right, here goes the steak. And I'm going to go ahead and lay on top of the steak a couple sprigs of fresh thyme. And I'm also going to lay on top a couple smashed garlic cloves. I'm not mincing them, I've just smashed them. And I'm also going to place 1 more tablespoon of butter on top of that steak. All right, I'm going to flip this steak over. So depending on how you like your steak, whether you like it rare, medium, well done, that is going to determine how long you cook your steak. It's quite surprising that steaks will cook up really, really quick. I like mine on the medium side, and this only takes a couple minutes, and I think this is there, so I'm going to go ahead and pull my steak off. And I'm going to let the steak sit here on my plate. That will make sure that all those juices stay inside of that steak. You don't want to cut into it immediately after you pull it off of the heat. But next I'm going to begin working on my mushrooms. All right, so I am going to slice up some shallot. In the same skillet that I fried the steak, I'm going to add these shallots. And I'm also going to mince a garlic clove. And then I'm going to add my mushrooms. I'm also going to add another tablespoon of butter. And I am cooking this on a medium to low heat because we want to slowly saute these mushrooms. And I'm also going to take a thyme sprig and just add some thyme leaves to it. And I'm also going to add some salt and pepper to these mushrooms. So these mushrooms are looking good. They're tender and they have a nice golden color to them. So I'm going to remove them and place them in a dish. All right, guys, so now it's time to make an amazing gravy to go with this steak. So in the same skillet that I cooked my steak and sauteed my mushrooms, I'm going to make the gravy. Now there's still a good amount of oil, butter that's in this skillet. I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of flour. And I'm just going to whisk this in until all that flour absorbs up all that grease and butter. I'm going to add just a little bit more butter to kind of smooth this out some. There we go. And I'm going to let this flour cook out just for a minute or so until it kind of gets to a nice dark color, which just gives a nice deeper, richer gravy. So what I have here is some chicken base that I have dissolved in some hot water, and this is a cup, so I'm going to pour this in. And I'm going to whisk quickly. And I'm going to go ahead and add another sprig of thyme, just leaving it whole. I'm going to add a couple dashes of Worcestershire sauce. All right, that gravy is looking good, guys. Drain these potatoes. I'm going to put the potatoes back in and remove these thyme stems. To my potatoes, I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of melted butter. And I'm also going to add about 1/4 cup of warm half and half, about 1/2 cup of some Parmesan cheese. Then I'm just going to mash these potatoes. Guys, these are so good. All right, these mashed potatoes are ready. It is time for me to plate up this dinner. All right, so I'm gonna have a bite of steak with some mushroom. That is absolutely outstanding. Those mushrooms are so divine. They have an amazing flavor. The steak is seasoned well. That gravy, oh my goodness, guys. Those mashed potatoes with the garlic and the Parmesan and a little bit of that thyme. Oh my goodness. Who needs to go to a fancy restaurant when you can cook a meal like this at home? Well, I hope that you guys enjoyed seeing what I cooked in my kitchen today, what we had for dinner. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, I will see you soon with more recipes.